I figure we'll just continue saying whatever we're saying.
Yeah.
It's it's been like 15 years,
Since
and
you
my
got LASIK?
yeah, and it's
Ooh.
my vision is still quite good. I do have like problems during light transitions, and so like night driving, that sort of stuff, like pin
Hmm.
sources of light. Uh, they're not as easy to kind of see around as they used to be b- before my before my transition into becoming a cyborg. I wish I was a cyborg. Like having late, like that's not that kind of modification. Like I'm not a cyborg. There's nothing implanted.
I mean, like yeah, I think the like some of the Hollywood cyborgs sell it to be really cool, but you could be like a really bogus cyborg too, like
Like
there's
the
the other end of the
worst
spectrum.
cyborg.
Yeah, think about that, you could have like, I don't know.
Have like
I have a screw in
mechanical.
my foot, you know,
Yeah.
from when I had
I
surgery.
Yeah, I
So
have all kinds of stuff in this arm. It's been completely
exactly.
rebuilt.
World's
Yeah.
boringest cyborg.
The basic machinery that lives in my body is basic, like it's from the Middle Ages. It's not really that cool. Like just have like a little catapult installed on my arm, like ka-ching!
Yeah. It's like so outdated. Well, you just have like a printing press on your elbow or something that can print like one
Oh,
letter at a time. It's just like
I'm
super
super into
fun.
that. Oh my god.
Oh, someone's on the live chat. Hello, nobody Zed.
Hello, fellow human person.
We are going to be starting the show soon. This is a live stream that gets recorded for a podcast. So if you have any questions or want to chat, now's a good time before we start the actual podcast recording bit. Then we'll be a little bit more just me and Grant, just intimate. You'll just be like the voyeur fly on the wall. And then after the show, you can ask some more questions, and we might check in on some of the questions. Are you allowed to be here? Yes, you are. I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean by that. This is
this is a public
this
thing. We're
this is
nothing
this is
nothing
this is safe
untoward is
content.
about to happen. I mean, maybe it is. Yeah, it's a little. Yeah, I can smell you from here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, so we're gonna have some comments before or after the show if you want, but in the middle, we're just gonna be shooting the shit, and it's a tech stream, web development stream. So
yeah. We're gonna talk about. Oh man, yeah, we're gonna talk about some real techie stuff. It's gonna get nerdy in here. Just wait for it. It's gonna be shop talk. Oh man.
Oh, it's gonna blend into the background. Great. Well, glad to have you aboard. Do you want to start the intro? You know what I've been kind of feeling is just going straight into the show, like no intro.
Yeah.
All right, you can take it away.
I don't even know what that means.
It's basically, hey, we're not going to have an intro, so go ahead and do the intro.
Like, what the fuck are you saying, man? Oh god, it's so good. It's so good. Hello.
Hello. That's it.
Oh god,
thing?
It's not even an entertaining way to die on stage. It's just happening, and it's not even it's entertaining to you because you enjoy watching me suffer, but everybody else really is just like,
really
what?
Don't. I mean, I do, but I don't. Like, it's kind of like a little of both,
Yeah. So we're gonna get around to this topic later, right? But we're gonna talk like performance and like third-party scripts and stuff, right? So like every developer's nightmare who's ever worked with web applications or websites, more websites than web applications, but it's there too. It exists in both. right? Like bug tracking stuff really bugged me, and so to speak, developing some web applications. Anyway, so we're gonna get around to that, but like we're not gonna start with that. Have you seen Loki?
Nice intro, bro. Nailed it.
You're welcome.
Um, thanks. I have seen the first episode.
Okay, okay. What are your honest like first thoughts since you've only seen one of the 3 episodes? There's going to be 4 as of tomorrow, mind you.
But who's counting?
Me.
Uh, yeah. Um, let's see. It was fun. I'm not so. I don't know. I've kind of lost some things since, or lost some interest since Disney took over some of the Marvel stuff. And it's still good. Like it's still good and fun. I'm not, you know, yucking someone else's yum. I just feel like they kind of,
That's
I
a
don't know. It
disgusting
feels.
phrase, by the way.
I like it. It's good.
Uh,
Don't yuck my yum, man. Just because I like it.
oh. Ah.
Uh, no, I like. I don't know. It's good. Like it kind of part of it feels like a Disney sort of cash grab thing, like with the Mandalorian. By the way, Disney owns Star Wars and Marvel and Disney, not to mention. That is
Wait, Disney owns Disney? Like
Disney
all of
owns
it?
Disney, all of it, and Pixar.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, Loki. Seen one episode. It was fun. I'm probably gonna watch the second episode. Um, yeah.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
good. It's really good production quality. Got to give them that.
Are you familiar with Terry Gilliam?
No.
So movies like Brazil, 12 Monkeys, um, let's see, what else has he done? Hmm.
I am
Imaginarium of
familiar
Dr.
with 12
Parnassus.
Monkeys.
Okay. Okay. So it struck me as I'm watching the first episode of the show, right? That the aesthetic and a lot of the machinery and a lot of the environment is very kind of post-apocalyptic Terry Gilliam style uh, stuff. Like it just has this distinct feel that a lot of his movies have and portray, and I really like it. I think the world that they've constructed is an interesting one, and so because of that, I stuck around, and I think that the story is quite interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's not your typical superhero garbage plot, which, like, honestly, most of the Marvel movies I don't watch because I think the writing is good. Um, I watch because Captain America is super hot, and
Sexy.
so
Yeah.
I mean that's America's
Did
ass.
you see you see the scene where he like splits the wood with his hands? Like he's just
No.
like splitting logs with his arms.
Oh, yeah, I do
Yeah.
remember that. That's pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, so like, there are reasons to watch those movies, and none of it is to be like is stimulated intellectually, right? Whereas I think this plot, and they're going after one of the, it's very tropey. It's time travel based. Um, I think there's potential for this to be good, and so I'm excited because I watched, what is it, WandaVision,
Hmm.
and I just didn't. It's not for me, right? Like, so many people loved it. They're like, WandaVision is so good and all this, and they just absolutely loved it. They adored all of the like super stylized first few episodes. And as soon as I saw the first 5 minutes of the first episode, like, I knew exactly what was happening. The whole thing was very transparent, and it's not because I'm like some, I'm really into comic
Whoa.
books and all this stuff, but like, it's not great writing, right? Like, it's just not great writing.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I thought there was. What am I gonna say? WandaVision wasn't really for me either. There were some things that I was like, yeah, whatever. I know there were some things that were really cool. Like I like that each different episode went through like a different uh, decade of media.
Yeah,
And then how they tied that back to like the characters' storyline or whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting to is I don't, yeah, superhero. I mean, superhero movies you don't watch for the writing though, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
Is this
some do probably.
this is
Although
possibly good.
The Watchmen is fantastic.
Watchmen is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's very
Anyway,
very good.
so
I
what?
also liked the original movie though, so whatever.
Yeah, you're saying that Loki has got you excited because it's got some interesting
I think it's
stuff.
possibly very good.
Yeah,
And it's
it
also
could be
like
good.
so. I have a 2-year-old, and so yeah, I basically am watching either this or Blippi or like some other Pixar animated
Boss
movie,
Baby.
Boss Baby, which I love. You know, I love it. Um, yeah, the getting thrown off here. Yes, the original Watchmen movie that was a absolute flop and is about 45 minutes too long. I thought that was quite good, even though they spent a lot of time on stuff that they just didn't need to. But the series Watchmen is obviously like far superior. Anyway,
What? Wait, no. See, no.
hmm?
The like most recent series that I think was like 2017
Hmm?
versus the movie that must have been like, well, now I got to look it up. Dang
It
it.
was
It's
like
like
2000.
2011 maybe.
Okay,
That movie was awesome.
yeah, no, it's great. I love it,
Oh, I
but
thought you said it flopped.
it did. It absolutely flopped. People hated it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it
No,
it
that movie
absolutely
was
flopped.
great.
No, I loved it, and the series is, I mean, obviously, uh, 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 a phenomenon unto itself. Like it is its own amazing piece of magic.
So yeah, Loki. I
Loki
think
doesn't
Loki.
quite have that same potential, but
Well, it doesn't have the
Loki does
dark
seem like it could
aspect.
be good.
Yeah, I like the character. I like the character choice. Like Loki is he's kind of like a what's his name? Like Deadpool. Like what do you call those? Like an anti-hero that's like
Yeah, yeah.
can go either way.
I mean,
He's just in it for himself.
I believe they call him a trickster,
Yeah.
something like that, right?
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But anyway, we should so Loki we're watching.
Yeah,
Looks good.
I'm a huge fan of Loki, and so I'm watching Loki, and I'm thinking, how can I handle? Because you know, everybody when you're implementing something on the web, there is some business interest somewhere who wants to like track your users for whatever reason. And if you've ever listened to the show, you probably know that my opinion on this stuff is like I don't like it. I find it
Grant
very
hates it.
intrusive.
AJ loves it. I'm in the middle.
That's true. But you're probably like the most actually privacy minded person of the three of us, really.
I would prefer if you didn't tell people that about me because it's like my personal, like GDPR. Like, please, don't put that data out.
Zing. Okay. My apologies. We can redact this before the release. There will just be like
No, but hold
seconds
on.
of silence.
Before we go on some large triad that takes us through the rest of the episode, we're talking about Loki, and
Oh.
we're gonna transition this into JavaScript, like third-party scripts. You were getting into web stuff.
Loki.
It felt like there was
Loki's
a transition coming.
Loki's clearly a business interest that wants to have his fingers in all the pies.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. And so I'm like, oh, that Loki, he's a wild one. We gotta watch it. I have like really no good way to tie this in. I'm sorry, I'm gonna fail.
Oh no, you don't need to. I mean, it's good to just chat too,
Okay.
But you did try, And we are almost 15 minutes into the show. So yeah, let's go ahead
Yeah,
and
let's
use
get to
that
like
as
some of the
a
actual content.
segue.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. So I don't know. Some of my initial exposure to tracking was in building some web applications. And we were using some bug tracking that would do full recordings of user behavior, right? Um, and this is something that I didn't feel personally was useful. Uh, and it clearly impacted the performance of the application for the end user. And so like the trade-off is,
Clearly how? Like did you do actual testing before with it and without it?
yeah, the performance was worse.
What, manual testing, or were you doing like Lighthouse scores or what?
This was not something that we tested in Lighthouse. This was perceivable doing manual testing.
Okay.
This
All
was
right.
also
Just
years ago,
making
so
sure.
I don't remember it super clearly. It's not as well documented as what I will get into eventually.
All right, all
Um,
right, all right.
so this was my first exposure, and I'm like, all right, so this is supposed to help us track bugs so that the users have a better experience, so we can like solve problems. But at the same time, it is in and of itself a problem. I'm like this,
Introducing a new bug. Yeah.
yeah, like I'm like what? And then there's like some rigmarole to do. If I remember correctly, we're doing some like reload if those scripts didn't load in the correct order, right? So like if they initialized too late, they couldn't hook into some string of behaviors by the user. So this interrupted the user's flow. And so it was just like so bad. And I get that they have probably some improved um, ergonomics around that stuff now, but honestly, my personal motto is if I'm paying you to use software, um, just let me use that. Don't try and track everything I'm doing. If you want some sort of feedback, there are very manual ways to do that. We should use
Yeah,
those.
that brings us to a really interesting like crossroads of the web right now is if you're paying if I'm paying you to use your service, right? But there's so many giants in the industry right now that you don't pay to use their service, at least not financially, right? And so the way that you pay these days is with data.
Mm-hmm.
So Google, Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, you know,
Yeah,
all of these companies that are built on this idea that it's their service is like quote unquote free,
right.
but it relies on them being able to track you and then
Yeah, their
do
user
the
base and analytics is their product. They're selling they're selling their internal demographics, which totally makes sense to me. And you know, as long as that's transparent or reasonably clear, I don't have a problem with it, right? Like when I'm using Reddit and I'm using what else am I on Twitter, right? When I'm using those applications, like I really don't mind that. Like that's kind of what I expect. But if let's say I am paying to use an Adobe product, some you know uh, web version of Photoshop or some cloud management uh, service for photos. I think they have something like that, right? Like they have Cloud
mm-hmm.
Lightroom Express or something like that, and you can get it as a subscriber when that's happening. So they've implemented a lot of really neat applications in the browser. I I don't expect to be tracked. I don't want them to be paying attention to every click the way that I tend to go through specific workflows within their application. Like I don't want them tracking that. They absolutely are and do. And so, you know, as an end user, I've never had an experience where tracking has benefited me. Have you?
I haven't, but I was talking with someone just the other day,
Yeah.
and oh, this is what it was. We were camping this last weekend. Okay, it was so freaking hot up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hear
It
it's
was
warm.
115. It was crazy.
That's more than hot.
And yeah, it was like it was unbelievable. But we would like head out of the city, go to the coast, towards the coast, end up getting a campsite kind of next to a river, and we invited a friend because win-win, right? So he was telling me about how he was on like Pinterest or something, and he got some targeted ad, and he was so stoked that he got this targeted ad because it was for this ice chest that he never would have known about before. But he loves this ice chest that he brought camping. He loves it so much that it's so perfect. It's one of those products. You ever buy something and you're like, I'm gonna splurge and I'm not even sure how I feel about spending this much for myself. But then you do it, and every time you use that thing, it brings you joy. That's what he got. And that's because of targeted advertisement. So yeah, it actually like he mentioned it and I was like, oh, I gotta bring that up on the show. Like that's relevant to the discussions that
Yeah.
we have.
No, that absolutely is. So okay, I get that. I get that. I'm also a chronic victim of I look for something, I buy it, and then I get ads to buy the exact same
Yeah, I hate
thing that I
that.
bought for weeks. It's nuts. It's real bad. So
Yeah, it's creepy.
yeah, and I feel like there's this big push to to implement and stockpile data as much as possible. I worked for a very, very small startup very early in my career. And this person seemed to think that they could pivot if their product started to fail. They could pivot if they collected enough data. They could start selling that data. And I'm like, you're not in that position. Like, there is no way that within it was like a local delivery type service too. Like it was not something that they could do that would scale in a way where they could have that kind of customer base. Like it was not plausible. And that's when I started like, okay, I need to probably deal with people who are like rooted in reality. Um, so
Yeah.
it's wild. It's like the desire for this stuff. I think does not come from a place that is to serve your users better. It is to leverage your users, and that's wrong. If you're having them pay to use a service, it's wrong. Now, on the other hand, in a marketing funnel, right? So, like if your service requires people to go through some other front end in order to purchase it, like all of that behavior seems like stuff that you would want to track in order to shore up
Know where
that
people are falling
process,
off.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly, right. And like as much as I disagree with tracking, like I totally understand the utility of that. And but the utility of that is to create a better tool to ingest users like they're going to get.
Let me just grab this user.
But like
Next.
that at least makes sense to me. Like the internal analytics and getting into that, just much less so. But this
Okay, so
uh
great. You're on your soapbox. We got another Grant rant going on over here.
the whole show is
But
just
tell me,
me being pissed about this.
yeah. But besides you just being pissed off about this, what are we talking about? Besides, is there like a takeaway, or we're talking like how do we make this more uh, a better experience for users? Because I don't think the answer is stop tracking. I just like
Well, that and
like it's just
that's
not going to
never
happen. It's not reasonable.
right. You're never going to land on that when you're having these discussions, right? And so I think a useful talk to have is like how to approach this when you're dealing with business, right? When you're dealing with somebody
Mhm.
who is making business decisions, whose focus is to gain insight into what their users are doing, what kind of case can you build to minimize the amount of tracking, to minimize like the performance hit of all of these third party scripts, right?
Right. Well, so there's two things there to unpack, and one is minimize the amount of data that you're tracking, and one is minimize the performance hit, and those are not both the same thing, right? Like if I want to minimize the amount of data that I'm collecting, That could just be making sure that instead of a user's name, email, and home address, maybe I'm anonymizing their session and like not even collecting their IP, right? That is minimizing the data that I'm collecting, but that has nothing to do necessarily with the actual performance. So, is it two things you have an issue with? Are you saying I'm going to present to my company stakeholders or whoever's, wants the tracking done? I want to present to them uh, to track less data in order to improve performance, but if they're not correlated necessarily, how do you do that?
Well, first off, I want to say anonymized data is absolute bullshit. If you anonymize enough data, it is absolutely identifiable at some point. And so like, yeah, I guess for like some small sites, it makes sense to have some level of anonymized data, and that's fine. But that's not really what I'm talking about here, right? What I'm talking about here is the impact to the user on performance, which is very real. So like there was a rebuild that I was doing using Gatsby at one point, and so I was building this Gatsby site, and Gatsby is known for blazing fast, like great performance, which for the most part, like it lives up to that claim to fame. I ran into a few issues with that, but that's a totally different episode. Um, One of the large issues came prior to launch. We took a huge hit in performance, and it was, believe it or not, right after doing a whole bunch of stuff with Google Analytics and some other analytics providers that we were wanting to ensure we had insights into how users behaved on the site. And so I had this conversation with business at that point, saying, what we do and the way that we handle this reflects on how we're going to handle client work. This was for an agency, and it was their internal site. And so I was very concerned that they were going to go in a direction. I was concerned that they were going to go in a direction that would allow them more insight than was useful to them, but would hurt our reputation as being able to build something performant, right? And so that's kind of a unique scenario where the performance of the site is selling the site. And so it gave me a few extra legs to stand on. But I think in general, a good user experience is always going to be a fast user experience. And if there is a noticeable impact on the user experience after, parsing, downloading, and then like just runtime perf, like it very quickly goes from a 95 or a 97 score in Lighthouse for performance to something in the low 80s or 70s, depending on like how heavy handed they are, right?
Okay, so as far as approaches that you can take to improve performance, you have like the impacts that third party scripts have on performance are going to be multifaceted. One is, do they affect bundle size, or like inherently any like library is going to have some file size that needs to be downloaded, right? So that's um, just in the data use for the user. And there's ways to get around that with asynchronously loading scripts, right? So it's not necessarily a noticeable difference in terms of time to interactive,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not waiting on that script to be downloaded in order for the program to continue execution or the HTML
Right.
to load or whatever. It would affect a user in their data that they download, which sucks for people with mobile plans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's also the parsing and like runtime impact
Right.
that, right? Like if I click a button and this analytics tracking software has attached some super poorly written event handler to that button, it might eat up, or it might like block some of the main thread, and then or eat up a lot of memory or whatever, and then the website is going to lag.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So how do you what is there to be done that's a solution to these?
I mean, so if the business side is not amicable, right? So if you don't have a reasonable argument to,
Again, you can't say just don't load it. If that's off the table, what are you gonna do?
yeah, right. If you can't get them to change their mind on anything, they're saying no, we need X, Y, and Z services on the client, and they need to all be reporting every user click and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is where we get into figuring out, okay, how do I unblock initial load time to interaction, which I think you kind of alluded to, defer and async on some of these, right?
Right. So what's the syntax on that? Let me look it up.
Yeah. Which so this is where you are just adding a script to a page. So like the HTML file itself gets a script tag, but in that script tag you use, I believe it's the defer keyword, or the defer
It's like an attribute. So you have a
mhm,
script that normally is like open bracket script source equals the path to your source
right.
close script tag, right? And on that sort of opening script tag, you can add uh, an attribute called either defer or async, and it doesn't need a value. You just like throw that attribute on there.
Okay. Okay. And so that allows allows the rest of the scripts on the page to continue to load while that's happening. That seems interesting, and I think that is plausible. However, I know that there are some requirements that I've run into in my career where this script absolutely needs to load and be available to get the very first user, whatever happens. And so if we defer this and it happens,
They
we get
might.
in that race condition, it may not be fully loaded. So like I've had that conversation where like you have to wait to load the rest of the application until this is in place,
Okay.
which is problematic. So we currently do not add script tags to our HTML file. I work in React, and so we have developed a hook that allows us to append these during the app like initialization process, right? And so in this hook, we can write a script tag and allow that script to load. And we do this in order to, and this is something that I would encourage people to do, sandbox scripts to where they're needed, right? So in a single page application, the whole application runs essentially like in a whole shell. So no matter what route you're on, you're gonna load the same application, and based on that route, the application may load a little bit differently. So with that information, I can know, all right, we're on this route. We need this slew of third-party scripts versus being in another route where we may not need that. We don't load those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So let me take it to like a more realistic example. If I
Okay.
am using Google Analytics on my website,
Mm-hmm.
how's that feel to you? That's a like a
So depending on where a user lands, so if they land on a page where we don't necessarily need GA tracking them, say they land on some sign up page that is only accessible through email, there's no organic traffic to this. And so we know if somebody lands there, and we know if they filled out the form and sent it off because we get the data, right? So we don't need GA there. However, after they're done, they go to some other like thank you landing page that has some options that we want to track where the user goes. So we don't initially load that. So the performance of that very simple like sign up form, super quick, right? Basically static site, very, very fast. Post submission, then we need this GA more kind of granular tracking abilities, right? So we would load it in that instance, and it's all the same application shell, right? So sandboxing where we want this to load.
Okay. Do you want to go into a little more detail for anyone that's listening that might be interested on how you do that sort of like sandbox, programmatic script loading?
So currently, because of the specific scripts that we're loading, it's not easy to generalize because we have to wait for different onload behaviors to be available. So some of these are security scripts. Some of these are, one of them is GA. One of them is, Optimizely, right? So like these are scripts that each of them, they will either append something to the window after they're loaded or whatever. So trying to generically know when any script has been loaded is very, very difficult. So essentially creating like a use effect hook that appends the script and then will once it will expose a piece of state that once you have started loading the script will wait for something to be available on the window or some event to fire from that script so that you're aware, okay, that is loaded, that's ready to use. We can now access whatever script methods we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bit manual in that sense, but I do think you could write some fairly generic stuff that gives you most of that functionality.
Yeah. I'm thinking of a component that I made once that was like a Stripe checkout button or like add to cart button or something. And for that to work, Stripe requires you to load their library onto the page on the window. So it's like a Stripe object on the window. And you have to serve it from their CDN.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for like security or like hashing or whatever reasons, which is fine. But that also means that you can't just like bundle it into your application or whatever.
Right.
And the issue with this button was that I don't have a add to cart button on every page. Like on my homepage, you're not looking at a product, so there's no need to add to cart.
Right.
So I came up with this sort of approach that was when this button component is mounted onto the page, it looks for a script tag in the document head and with the URL to the Stripe thing, right? So it's like a document query selector script tag where href equals the URL for the Stripe thing, right? If it doesn't exist, then it will actually write that script tag to the head, which then the browser will know to download that tag or download that resource. And then at the same time, I also fire off a fetch request that goes and gets that resource. So that will either come back from the cache or not, or something like that.
Okay.
I like append it to the head and then I fetch that resource so I know to like go and wait for that amount of time for it to come back. And then I make the button active.
Whoa. Let me hold up here. So you're running a fetch request, like a duplicate fetch request, right? Because the browser's going to do it on its own. You're running a duplicate request just to get the timing right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think I feel like theoretically it shouldn't download, like it shouldn't be a double cost on the user for the download because that should come out of the cache, right? Whichever one finishes first, I believe.
Okay.
I believe.
I mean, yeah, we need somebody from like V8 to answer that. But yeah, browsers are like browsers are the real hero here. We're just hacking at it.
Oh, but that's the thing. That's why you should. That's why you always go back to the platform.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, so and it does that on mounted, right? So if you put one button on the page, it runs that and like adds the thing to the head. And because it was a single page application, if I go to a different page and then come back, that script is still in the head.
Yeah.
So the button doesn't have to like do that fetch request dance
Right.
again.
Right. Right. Right.
So that was like I was like, that's kind of like a clever thing, but I've never seen anyone do it or talk about it or anything. So I was like, that's probably a dumb idea. Let me just like throw it in the root HTML and just like load it by default on every page.
Yeah. Yeah. We append them. We append the script tags in the body. We do not put them in the head, but it's very very
Same thing.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah, makes no
Like it.
difference at that point.
Yeah. It's yeah. And we create some like closures around the state so that there's if it has been fetched at some other point in this user's journey, like we're not duplicating that.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's like
Yep.
we're essentially talking about different methods of like lazy loading resources.
Yeah, which I think like so this is an idea that I had. So we're currently analyzing what our third party script bundle needs to look like, right? And we're
Mhm.
talking about it, and I'm thinking like, can I just have a service worker do this? Can I have a service worker that goes off and handles all of this? And so like I'm going to start some research into whether or not I can use a service worker to handle some of this. The one issue that I'm thinking is if I load these resources via a service worker, they need access to the DOM. And the service worker itself does not have access to the DOM, but I'm wondering if the scripts as they come down, if they're executed, if they have access to the DOM, then this is a totally valid way to do this. Instead of like my other thing was like on what is it, request idle callback or whatever, like loading scripts at that point. But
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm thinking like you could pass the payload from the script to the or from the service worker to the script that initiated the service worker as like one of their like messaging
yeah, like
payloads.
it's all post message, right? That's what worries
Yeah,
me. Is
yeah.
like, oh god, if I have to
And
use the post
but
message
then the
API
next
to talk about
well,
this,
but
blah,
then
blah, blah.
the next thing is like if you're getting the actual JavaScript bundle, like what do you do with that? Well, you have to like execute it in the
Yeah,
actual running script. And how do you do that? Well, eval, which is like definitely don't touch that.
yeah,
Um,
that's a never mind. That's a
yeah, so I don't know. I'd be curious to hear if like there's any listeners that have done something like this with service workers to use that to because service workers are definitely a really awesome tool for
yeah.
increasing performance if you need to like offload work from the main thread. I don't know about like somehow offloading lazy loading resource downloading. But what
Yeah.
like
So like it's great for all kinds of resources. I just wonder if it's good for third party scripts and how.
but why would it be any different than an async or defer script tag?
I would want very manual, granular control over how it behaves, right? So I'm not going to throw a bunch of script tags into the actual HTML document. I need to know when these load because the application shell that we're building around this stuff needs to access them, right? To send off
Mm,
events or whatever, right? So the like async and defer opens us up to possible like these are no longer available or these are not available yet,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, you get into like a race condition. So then what you'd have to do is somehow check if the object that you're trying to target is on the window yet.
Yeah.
And if not, somehow wait.
Tell my service worker, get on it.
Yeah, you could do like some sort of timeout, or you could do which is not. I can't think of a good way to do that.
Yeah.
Hey, you could look into the solution that I had, which is like somehow go and download, like if the script is, what is it? If the object is not exist in the, if the object doesn't exist on the window, append this to the browser and then go and fetch the resource and come back. And once you're done, then we can assume that the object is now in the window.
So we have one script that I'm aware of currently that its job is to append more scripts and load those and orchestrate that, right? So
Yeah.
this is one place where like that tactic would kind of fall down. And our approach of really just hello. Our approach.
Yo, AJ, jumping in.
We can't hear you. I just hit myself in the ear. That's not smart.
Yeah.
So AJ is joining the show. But so this is one area where one script appends other scripts. It's tough.
Yeah. Sorry for the interruption there, Grant. Why don't you go ahead and finish while AJ looks into...
Yeah. So
AJ, just to catch you up, Grant is walking through some of his pain points with third-party scripts and tracking stuff. I know, again. And yes.
Hello? I can't hear
Were you
you.
about to say something?
How about now? Can you hear me?
Oh, what up?
Hey.
Hello.
Austin looks confused.
That's just his face.
Hello?
Hey. Can you hear me, Austin? Grant can hear me. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I can. Oh, whoa. Later. I heard him. Everyone's gone. It's just me.
Hey.
And then we
back
lost
again.
Austin. Well, hey, I can hear you. That's great.
Cool.
Yeah, so I was just talking about how we actually load a script that its entire job is to load other scripts.
Are we all here?
It's a script orchestrator. We are all here.
Yes. Can
Hey.
you hear everyone?
I can hear you.
Yeah, awesome. We did it. We fixed it.
Fantastic. Everything's good.
So a script orchestrator.
Yeah. So it's its entire job. And so we had developed some methods around like loading these third-party scripts that start to fall apart when these third-party scripts load other. Can we call them fourth party? Fifth? Party of five? That was a terrible show. Oh man. Like that it just had party of five in like white text, and then the red underline was like all the drama. Oh man.
I don't think I ever saw it.
Good. I never saw enough of it to really know what the show was about, but it was just like, I remember the ads and being like, I was young enough to be like, this is definitely not for me. But whoever this is for, I just feel bad for them because it seems like a real heavy show. Someone's always in some real serious trouble on that show. So I don't know. I really think that the best thing you can do for your users as a developer is advocate heavily for a good user experience, and that usually does not involve being tracked in everything that you do. It's a tough battle to win, but you may be able to get some compromise, and that's a win for the user every time.
A tough battle in trying to ship a product without analytics and tracking stuff, or in other aspects?
Well, trying to minimize the footprint and the impact of that, right? So like, I think, some members of my team are going to be implementing analytics on some very specific flows, and it is super, super granular, right? Like we have to know every single thing that this user is doing. And there's a compromise to be had there in that, okay, what's the big picture? What do we really need to know? Like what is the actual useful knowledge to have here? And we could probably cut that footprint in half, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, once we've loaded that script, how much does that really actually impact the user experience? Probably not a whole lot. It's really just like implementation time, and that's our job. So we should just do that. But if there's a way to do this where we're maybe sending less data down the wire, or like tracking things that are not quite as processing intensive potentially, right? So like mouse movements, very specific timings, like these sorts of things can be really, really heavy. And I've seen people want to know, like, how long does it take a user to do this and this and this? Or like, how long are they typing in this field? Like,
how far down the page do they scroll?
Oh man. Yeah, just if you have business interests that are asking those kinds of questions, like start looking for another job. That's insane.
I disagree, but
my most of my answers to job problems are just quit.
Find another job.
Just the grass is greener somewhere else.
So I don't know. After all that, AJ, what you got any thoughts that you want to add as we kind of come around to the end of the show?
Let's keep going. I'll just throw in random quips if I see a good opportunity.
Yeah. Well, let's get your opinion on this, because I think that Grant, like complaining about analytics and the impact on performance. If it's just Google Analytics, I don't think it's complaining, addressing, whatever.
Expressing concern, sir.
Yeah, expressing concern. If it's just Google Analytics, I don't think that there's much of an argument to be had there. I think the real problem is when you have Google Analytics running next to HubSpot, running next to Optimizely, running next to yada, 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 that does, eyeball movement tracking, and then
Mixpanel.
Yeah.
And then you've got GTM on top of that, because why not?
Yeah. So the more realistic concern here is when you have so many scripts running at the same time, a lot of which do similar things, and it's just maybe it's become so easy for someone in marketing to be able to add whatever script that they want, and they don't realize the impact of adding a new script, or they don't know who added the other scripts, and so they're really excited about this new service, so they're going to add it and test it out, whatever. So is the issue really in third-party scripts, or is it in more of like an organization level of how easy it is to let the number of scripts get out of control?
Yeah, if you've ever worked on a WordPress site, you know how crazy plugins can get.
Yeah, exactly
what you're saying.
So AJ, do you have any advice for people that are listening on actual like practical takeaways for improving performance as it relates to third-party scripts?
Err on the side of using less.
And what do you reach to kind of draw the line?
I like to look at comparison articles and sites. So, like you're saying, with all the different analytic tools, like let's say you're doing something that's doing mouse tracking. There's a lot out there, and so I like to find someone who's really an expert in the field and see what have they said about tool X, Y versus Z, and look at that that analysis of the analytics.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to like a few steps. I wouldn't want to be on the side of analytics are bad or all these tracking things are bad, and so we have to take them off the site right away. I think that you have to start with an audit, see what your performance looks like as a baseline before doing any work, because that's what you have to do for any test to see if it's worth it. Do an audit of all the scripts that are currently running on the site. See where there's some overlap. Start to trim away where the overlap is, because then you're going to improve bundle size, or like download size. Start looking into async, like what can be loaded asynchronously or lazy loaded. And then at some point, it's a matter of Grant, like what you were saying is only after all that, then do you really need to get into what events are being triggered when and how frequently do those occur. Because if it's just tracking things on page load, I don't think that's going to be like, I don't think that you're going to find a whole lot of performance bottlenecks there, right? You should be looking for either low hanging fruit that's really easy to tackle, or go for the big things that are, maybe it's a performance issue in your application code that fixing that is going to have a 2x improvement over.
Wait a minute.
switching.
It's my
What?
fault now? No. This entire show is about blaming bad performance on other people. Which brings me back to like, okay, I think that there's
gaslighting, huh?
Yeah. All the time. Professional gaslighter lighting the gas. So there's a question here that I think is a really good one, which is like, these scripts are written, right? Like there are people who write these. And I think not all of these scripts are bad for performance. I think there are some scripts that mind their manners quite well, that perform well. And so I wonder, like, one, please somebody reach out to me on the internet who writes these scripts for these companies, right? Like these tracking scripts are like, I know again that there's not like equal performance hits for each of these. So, I think it's important to kind of keep that in mind, because who knows? Maybe Austin, you were talking about like Stripe specifically, their scripts that need to load on the page are probably pretty good, because Stripe has some incredible engineering cred. And if they had some like perf issue in their scripts that they're, shipping to all these people, that would be a huge detriment to their reputation. Right. And so like, I think, AJ, that's kind of what you were getting at, where like, you need to look at where these are coming from and not, make an assumption one way or the other, but like, do your research before you just throw a bunch of stuff on your web stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with these tools, they're so pervasive that like, even if you don't realize it, you're probably interacting with these tools one out of every 5 sites you would visit.
It's probably on this Restream site right now. They know where my mouse is. I mean, I gave them access to my microphone and my video, so like they're literally watching me. It's fine. Austin, you've turned into just a dot with a little person in the middle.
Oh, I think that's a understatement. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, use analytics, track all the things, and piss off Grant.
I mean, I've always been just a dot with a little person in the middle.
You certainly are. Oh man, I think you might be having some timing issues.
No,
as well.
I feel like I'm having some bandwidth issues, so just trying to.
Oh man, I was gonna say, like, you were doing so good for the entire show. Like I almost asked if you had gotten an Ethernet cable. But I should know better.
That's a good one.
Ruthless. Oh man. Well, we should start to wrap up. I know Austin's on
It's all right.
the infinite delay. So we've got some shout outs. AJ, do you have any shout outs?
Yeah, my shout out today is going to be Mad Max Fury Road. I watched it recently, and it's just a great, fun movie.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
I totally agree. That is like such a great. Well, okay, it's not a great world in the sense that I would want to participate in it ever.
Yeah.
I would not do well there. However, it's like such beautiful world building. Like Mad Max movies really have that edge. It's super, super cool. I actually had a road bike that I had named Furiosa.
Excellent.
Yeah.
But definitely not the right situation for web development.
No. Would be out of work. Oh, man.
What do you got, Grant?
So we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but I just really want to drive the point home. I'm enjoying Loki. I think it's really, really good. And Austin, as usual, is the skeptic. But
I said it was fine.
I think, fine is not exactly.
I'm gonna watch the next episode.
Okay, please do. But I really think that it's another example of some really interesting world building, some possibly good writing. I really think that, like, I'm very hopeful that they don't like screw it up. Yeah, but I think already it's off to a better start, at least for my taste. It's off to a better start than the WandaVision show was. Yeah.
I thought Owen Wilson was an interesting casting choice.
Anything with Owen Wilson, I'm down.
Yeah, he's a real charmer.
Mm-hmm.
And he can
interesting to see him in Marvel.
I like him. I can't wait to see what happens in the next episode. Because you don't even know what's happening, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. But do you have a shout out? This delay is killing me.
Shout out of silence.
Okay. Well, I will do your shout out for you then. Your shout out is Viewtensils. It's a Vue library that is awesome. And when you type it into Google Docs, it tries to change it to utensils.
Wait,
yeah.
Are we talking Viewtensils?
Yeah, I did your shout out for you with Viewtensils.
You're not doing my shout out for me, dude.
All right, go for it. Do it.
No, my internet connection was being janky here. Okay, I'm giving a shout out to Jonga Kimchi. So Jonga Kimchi, I found it at Costco, and it's not like some ungodly amount of kimchi in a giant, like 5-gallon tub. It's a very appropriate amount, but it is the best kimchi I have ever had. I love it. I love it. So it earned a shout out from me.
Cool. I'm a fan of kimchi. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Also check out Viewtensils.
Also, Viewtensils goes great with kimchi.
Oh no. Actually, you know what I did want to give a shout out to? I wrote an article that I wanted to give a shout out to called SVG or OMG SVG Favicons FTW.
I see.
Yeah, it was. I had a lot of fun working with SVGs, Favicons, and we get into writing them inline, so you don't have an extra HTTP request, which for a Favicon I don't think really matters all that much. But it makes it really nice to like just copy and paste onto any side project I have, and I don't have to worry about like having the Favicon in the folder somewhere. And then we get into like detecting for dark mode, and we can change the colors on the SVGs to like black and white or white and black.
Nice.
And then I get into some of the resources that like some folks on Twitter have shared for like adding emojis as your favicon or whatever. It's
Nice.
cool. It's fun. It's worth a read.
Very cool.
And it's OMG SVG VGA icons. This is what you Google for?
Just go to austingill.com. It's the first blog post on there.
Okay, definitely don't go to stegosaurus.com.
Or kimchi.com.
Or kimchi.com. Okay. So we remove kimchi. We add in utensils. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for stopping by. I hope you've maybe learned something. I hope it doesn't get you in trouble at work. Something like hold harmless, no indemnification. I didn't do it. It's your own fault if you use my advice.
But you can always quit.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Good stuff.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Later.
Cool. All right.
Austin, I can't even tell if you're there.
See ya.